welcome to the Mad Madam Mel podcast. We're now up to episode 13 and it has been a while actually. But anyway, so if you're new here, my name is Mel, and if you're not, if you're a returning viewer, then thank you for joining me again. My name is Mel, obviously, and I live on an island off the north coast of Scotland called Orkney. So I'm just going to try and crack on as quickly as possible. This is, if you've not been here before, this is a crafting podcast, primarily knitting, with a bit of sewing and a bit of crochet and a bit of whatever else I've been up to, really. So I'm going to try and get through a lot of finished objects today. It's been several months since my last podcast, mostly because I lost my mojo over the winter months, which came back with around about the start of the lockdown. So there is one from the back end of last year, but the rest is this year, fairly recent. So we'll try and get through as quickly as possible and try and get up to date. I have 2 garments, a shawl, a cowl, and several pairs of socks. So we'll try and get through as quickly as possible. Let's see, what have I got around me? First finished object is actually what I'm wearing, which is a penny dress. That's by Colette Patterns. The name of the pattern is the penny dress, and the company is Colette Patterns, and this is the second penny dress that I've actually made. It's a collared dress. It's quite the way I've made it's quite 1940s style, and I'm going to insert some better photos that I took outside of me wearing this here somewhere. So this dress I made with a vintage fabric I've had for quite some time, quite a few years actually, and this came via my husband's aunt, passed it. I don't even know where it came from, but it's quite old, and it's this olivey green colour. I'm going to stand up, you're going to get like boob shot here. So it's like an olivey green with these white roses all over it, and I've added 3 buttons here, and the buttons only go down to the waist, and then there's a full skirt. On the original pattern there is a front button placket at the front here for the skirt, but I changed this the same way I did when I did this the first time, this dress, and I added in a side zip underneath the arm instead. I just think it makes a nicer finish. It's not an invisible zip, it's just a regular zip. I'm going to try and show you now. You can just see under there, it's just a regular zip. And the buttons are odd because I couldn't find 3 buttons that matched, that looked good with this dress in my button tin. My button tin is inherited from my gran, so I shall have to show that sometime, but it's this ancient battered old tin. There's not many buttons left in it, but I've added 2 since then, but most of the buttons in there now are new, but there is some of the vintage ones that I inherited in there too, so I'll have to do a little wee video on that sometime. So I've added vintage buttons, I've added front pockets in the front of the skirt, and like I said, I will, if I haven't already, I will insert photos here. Last time I made this dress I lined it, and I lined it with the brushed cotton because it was quite a thin-ish cotton, the outside fabric. This time it's a much more heavier cotton, and so I haven't lined it, it's just as the pattern was intended. It's got a collar and I haven't added sleeves, I've left it sleeveless. I just prefer it, it means I can put on a cardigan and it's not going to feel bulky around my arms. Really pleased with it. I raised the hemline a little so it's kind of knee length, although it's a little longer than knee length. I think I may turn up the hem slightly more. I like my hemlines to finish kind of just at the top of the knee. At the moment it's a little bit longer, it's a little bit more 40s style, which is fine, but I just like mine to be kind of just skimming the top of your knees. But other than that, I'm really pleased with it. It's really comfortable. This pattern is really comfortable. I bought this in the larger of the available paper pattern sizes that you can buy, and I've made the smallest in that pattern to fit me and my bust size. I don't think I've changed any of the other measurements on the body other than the length for the first dress. Everything else, it's fit really, really nicely. Most patterns I've got to grade in some shape or form, either to make them bigger or especially around the bust. But this pattern fits really, really well, and I'm really, really pleased with it. So that's my first finished object. It's not even a knitting one, so we must crack on. Okay, second finished object, another garment. So let me just get that. Okay, if you watched my last podcast, you probably will have seen this. This is the Aqua Sweater, and this was a whip last time. But as you can see, it is finished. In fact, this has been finished since November. This is the only object I have finished from around about the time of my last podcast, before my mojo upped and left. So this was originally going to be for myself, and it ended up being a garment for my husband, and I lengthened it and lengthened the arms and stuff to fit. When I was halfway through this, I decided I didn't like the way it fit on me. It's so heavy, such a heavy weight of yarn rather, and it's so bulky, it didn't fit right. I have plans for other bulky sweaters for myself, but I will make the fit slightly different than this one is. So the yarns that I've used is deep stash yarns. I've used a mixture. So this terracotta colour here, this is a mystery DK weight from my really, really, really old stash from when I used to get my yarns from charity shops. I still get the odd yarn from charity shops, but not as many as I used to. And it's actually a DK weight, which I've held double, because all the rest of the yarns in this are iron weight. So I don't know what yarn that one specifically is, but the beige and the brown is Drops Alaska, and the olivey green is that's Drops Nepal, which has got alpaca in it. This is old stash, and I'm actually trying to get through quite a lot of my old stash this year. I've got plans to get through quite a lot of my old drop stash, which is mostly iron weight, and get through some winter sweaters hopefully in time for the winter. So really long sleeves. My husband has gorilla arms. He's really tall. He's 6'3". So it's really, really long arms, really long body, and 2x2 rib, top and bottom. It's a pretty basic yoked sweater. It's knit in the round, top down. I'm not sure if the original pattern is top down or whether you knit the yoke up and then, I can't remember. It's been a while. And this is a Caitlin Hunter pattern. I've actually got another one of hers on the needles as well. But really pleased with it. He seems really pleased with it. It's got a little bit of pilling now because it's been worn, because it's been done since November. But I think it'll last really, really well. Convincing him to wear it is another thing. He likes it, but he does a lot of outsidey work, like sawing wood and that sort of thing. He doesn't want to ruin it. He doesn't want to spoil his sweater. So I have to remind him to wear this, and he tends to wear this like on an evening when it's cold, but it's not cold now because it's June. So that's first knitting finished object. Next we have another garment, but this one is for myself. Okay, this is my oldest, or was until recently, my oldest whip. And it is the Gnarled Oak Sweater by Alana Dacos of Never Not Knitting. And this was on the needles for 4 years. That's the longest of my whips. I've got through quite a few whips. Just before we went to lockdown, I suddenly got my knitting mojo back, and I had the urge to get through all my whips and clear my whips list. That's works in progress if you're not sure, but I wanted to clear my Ravelry whips. So this one eventually got done. I liked the pattern. I changed it a bit. Not a lot. What happened was it's knit bottom up. So I knit about 4 or 5 inches up, and I got bored because I don't like knitting purl, and there's a lot of purl knitting in this. So I started knitting it in the round. and I knit the rest of it in the round up to the top here, and then I sticked it. I sewed along either side of the centre ends with a sewing machine and cut it, and then picked up for the button band. The cabling looks really nice. I'm really pleased with it, and I made the sleeves 3/4 sleeve, and these are supposed to be knit from the cuff up. I actually picked up the stitches from the top and knit them down so I could knit them to the length I prefer, which is a 3/4 sleeve. If I've got full length sleeves, I'm always pushing them up, so 3/4 sleeves it is. I added some of my buttons, and the only thing left to do on this, I'd say it's finished, but I haven't sewn the ribbon on the inside of the steek yet. I have the ribbon, it's got little birds and stuff on it, so I still need to sew those on. I will do that probably one evening this week. Really pleased with it. I'm trying to remember the yarn. It is, I'm going to butcher the name here, it's merino blend. It's wool, 100% wool with merino in it, and it's really soft, and it's in this lovely caramel colour. I'm going to try and get it to show its true colour. Yeah, that's about right. It's quite a warm caramel colour, or baby poo brown. I did call it for a time, mostly when it was annoying me and I didn't like doing the purling. Really pleased with it. It's pilling like already, and I've only worn it once, but I had a feeling it would when I was knitting it. It was already starting to pill even whilst I was knitting, but there's not much I can do about it. But it'll go really well with lots of my autumnal type colour stuff, and yep, really pleased with that. So that's garment number 2, and I think that's all the garments in my finished objects. Okay, next finished object. I've got a shawl, which is my second oldest, or was my second oldest whip. I will put all the links below also to the patterns and my Ravelry project pages, so if I don't mention the yarns or needle size or anything like that, I have my Ravelry pages really up to date. I keep it up to as much up to date as possible with yarns, needle sizes, and what I'm working on. So this is the Fern Shawl by Tiny Owl Knits, and oh, I love this pattern. The moment I saw it, I fell in love with this pattern. It's got these 2 fern fronds. Now, are they full fronds or are these bits the fronds? I think the whole lot's the frond, but I couldn't swear to it. My mother would tell me, I'm sure. And I didn't change the pattern a lot. I changed it a little wee bit. All I did was, I knew I wasn't going to have enough yarn to knit this full size. It's pretty much full size. If I put this on, I can wear it, you know, properly. It's definitely big enough. It's not a shawlet. It's, well, I would say it's somewhere between a shawlet and a shawl. So there's plenty of length to it. It's not like up here and ends flying off everywhere. It is nice, and it's quite a full shawl. It's knit in a DK weight. It is Sublime yarn, I think. Ignore my, I'm going to show you my floats in a moment. And it is merino, cashmere, silk blend, I believe. And it's really soft. Again, another pilly yarn, which is why I've used it for a shawl. I have some more of this left. I didn't use all of the green, and I have some more in another colour, but it will not be used for a garment. This was the first time I had knit colourwork flat. I think it was one of the first times I knit colourwork, truthfully. I just fell in love with the pattern, and it had to be done. So what I did to make the shawl smaller is I took out, because you knit this from this one end to the middle to the other end. So you're knitting the chart, I'm going to struggle to show you this, but you're knitting back and forth this way. So what I did was I took out some of the stitches before the the leaf on the chart and did the same here. So it's not as deep a band of purple each side of the leaf, which is fine. There's not a huge amount of difference in stitches, but there's just, you know, half a dozen either side. And I stopped knitting the leaf, I think it was 2 fingers, like maybe that much of each leaf, before I got to the centre. And all I did was I adjusted the pattern to add on this little bit of stalk, which would have been a little bit further along, and I added it on here and got rid of the extra bits of leaves, and then did the centerpiece and did the same with the chart for the other leaf as well, and it worked out really well. I shall show you how much I've got left. That is all I have left of the plum. I calculated out really carefully, so I knew how much I would have left, and that's literally all I have. The pattern has like pom-poms, not pom-poms, like tassels on the end, but that would drive me crazy, so I didn't add those. And like I said, I've got plenty of the green left. Now this is colourwork knit flat. I'm in no hurry to knit colourwork flat ever again. I really didn't enjoy it. I found it very difficult to keep my tension even on the purl side. My floats are pretty good most of the time. They're not bad at all. The chart looks, they look diagonal, they're not, it's just the way I'm holding the shawl. Although by the time I was getting to the end, I was getting quite impatient with it. My tension is not great from when I first started the shawl. This is the first end that I did, and you can see there's a bit of pulling on the stitches. But after a time, I figured out the best way of wrapping this yarn further back on a couple of stitches further back, so that I wouldn't get that pulling effect, that kind of embossed effect that I've got going on over here. You're supposed to do this and knit this in and now forgive me on my pronunciation here, it's intarsia or intarsia depending on who you listen to. But I couldn't understand how that would work for this. Intarsia, usually it's more of a, I would say a bigger picture on your background. Like she does the same designer does a pattern where there's like a baby fawn on the middle of a jumper, so you've got almost like a block oval in a sense, but this is quite bitty and feathery, and I just couldn't understand how you'd work intarsia like that. So I just treat it like I would colour work in a mitten or such like, and just that I dropped the colour, then knit that, knit back, and then pick the colour back up again, and carried the plum along the same way I would carry it for colour back. I'm not sure if that's what you're supposed to do anyway, but that's what I did here, and it worked out okay. But knitting colour work on the flat was no fun. I did not enjoy it, but I was really pleased when I finally completed this. So the pattern was originally in, I think it was supposed to be like a brown background, but on the photos it had this plummy tint, and I really like that, which is why I used this plummy, which is a lot brighter than the original yarn, but it works really well, so I'm really pleased with that. Okay, we've got one more finished object that isn't a sock. I seem to get through quite a few socks at the beginning of this, so I'll just pick that up. Okay, this is a cowl, and it's quite a wintry cowl, as you can see, just in time for the summer. This is the Pine Bough Cowl by Diana Waller. Paper Tiger. And I've adapted this pattern. I can't seem to leave a pattern well enough alone. This pattern originally is twice the size of this. It's like a big loop that you would double up. Plus it's knit as a tube. So it's like a tube scarf which is joined at each end. So you knit it in the round, a big long tube in the round, and then you graft each end together so the inside of the cowl is patterned as well as the outside of the cowl. Well, I didn't have enough yarn to do that, and I didn't want to double up yet cowl. I wanted a single regular cowl, so it would just, you know, go on like a cowl. I don't want it too bulky, you know. I often wear cowls in the house, you know, to cover your chest when it's a bit chilly in the winter. I'll wear them outside as well, but I don't, I spend more time at home than I do out. So I had the yarn in mind that I wanted to use for this. I used some yarn that I bought in Swansea. I think it was it last year? 2 years ago? 2 years ago, after I'd been to Edinburgh Yarn Festival. I went on a road trip with Mum, and one of the places we stopped at was in Swansea, and I bought this yarn, and this yarn is, now I've got another skein of it here so I can remember what it is, but it's this one, which is Ella Ray Cozy Alpaca. It's a mixture of acrylic and alpaca, this one, and I got this on sale, and I bought a skein of red and a skein of green and a skein of like a, it's like a beigey colour. I'm going to show, yeah, kind of like that. It's slightly more beige, not beige, but it's got that beigey tint to it, and I obviously have plenty of that left, so I can use that with the red. Originally I thought the red in it would all look quite festive. It's really blowing out that white, that cream. It would look quite festive, but I thought a Christmas one might be a bit much. It would never get much use. So instead I've gone with the green, and I used up every bit of the green. I think there was probably, you know, like a little scrap left over. What I did was I rejigged the pattern around the colour work charts so that I could knit it flat and still keep the pattern going in the direction that it did on the chart. So instead of just, I mean, if I'd kept the charts and knit them in the tube the way that you do, then the pattern would have been going sideways, so the cowl would have kind of looked like that, and I didn't want that. I wanted it to look as it did in the pattern. So I rejigged the colourwork charts. Instead of knitting what would be a row in that, I just knit columns, and I just did a garter edge top and bottom so that it wouldn't kind of sit square upright. It would give it a bit of squish. And yeah, the floats are not too bad, most of it. I made a couple of mistakes on my floats where I'd made a couple of stitches wrong, and I had to go back and kind of drop the stitches and pick them back up. But when I picked up the floats, I obviously picked them up wrong, and I didn't realise until I was a row or two in, so I've had to kind of fudge the picking up the floats there. But generally they're pretty good. I'm really pleased with them. The original chart, I believe, was knit in a DK weight, I think, but I've knit this is more of an iron weight, and then the needle sizes will be on my Ravelry page, but it still worked out right. I had to adjust slightly. I missed out, this should have had a little tiny bit of leaf there, because obviously when you're knitting it as a tube, it's a continuous pattern, so I just didn't put a piece on there, and I had to adjust this edge slightly as well to account for it not carrying on as in a tube. So that's for me, and really pleased with that too. Okay, now we're going to get into sock territory, and I will try and get through these as quickly as possible. Okay, so when I look back through my Ravelry project pages, I realised that I had a lot of socks on the needles. Quite a few. I usually have a pair on the needles for travelling, you know, as a passenger in the car, so that I can knit socks. Although I've discovered recently that it doesn't seem to matter if I've got a small project or a large project. I think I've got alpaca touching my mouth. So I wanted to get some of them off the needles, and they were some of the first things I got off the needles, because I wanted to have a sense of achievement and getting through them. So the first ones, or one of the first pairs I got off the needles was, stop saying off the needles, was my advent socks from my yarn advent calendar I got this past Christmas. The socks are knit scrappy style, and I've knit 4 rounds in each yarn mini. These were knit the pattern using I think it's called the Sugar Frost socks, and I will link to them below. And I've knit 4 rows of each colour for the pattern. The yarn advent was from Pixie Yarns this year, and it is a merino nylon base. I really like some of these colours. I really want to get in full size skeins. Let me find the one I really like. I really like that green one there, or that light green one, and I like that one there especially. And what I've done is I've done contrast toes and heels. That is a, I must stop, look at the camera. There is a commercial stock yarn, that one, and it is Sudor, I think. It's an old one. It's got, the measurements are in, it's like a 1 ounce ball. I picked it up from, I think actually I snaffled it out of my sister's old stash, and it's got an old price on it. It's an old yarn, but it's nice. It's got a lovely woolly thick, it's a sturdy sock yarn. And I've done, my toe up is I usually do a Turkish cast on. Yeah, I knit toe up, and I've done a eye partridge heel and 2x2 rib, and I've also done, because it's a merino nylon, I've done a slip stitch section, 2 inches slip stitch on the ball of the foot, because merino socks and me do not mix. I'm pretty heavy on my feet and they just wear out like nothing. The past 2 pairs of socks I've knit with merino nylon blend, they haven't lasted 5 minutes, so I've started doing slip stitch on the bottom of socks that I've got merino in them rather than BFL or a commercial yarn. So those are the first pair, and I've got a pile on my knee, so I'll just put that over there. The second pair is technically another Christmas pair. It is these ones, and these are going to really struggle to show up on camera, but these are the Silent Night socks by Lily of Nordic Stitches, and you can see they've got Christmas trees on them, and these go all the way up one side of the sock. They kind of offset off to one side. You can see a line of Christmas trees, and I had to adapt this pattern because I'm awkward, and the pattern is originally cuff down, and I don't do cuff down, so I spent ages in December. This is probably what like set me off just going off knitting. There was nothing wrong with the pattern. The pattern is brilliant. It was me deciding to change the pattern was the problem. So I had to adjust the lace work section to fit toe up. I'm kind of wishing I'd just left it because it would have been a lot easier. But it worked out, and the trees look pretty much as they did on the original pattern. It's got this really unusual toe, which I really like, which is like got a central, what would you call it, like a slip stitch center bit, and these nice garter ridges on it. I really like this shape of toe. It looks a little strange when it's folded, but when it's on your foot it looks really, really nice. I did a half slip stitch, half eye of partridge, half garter heel, just to be different. I thought it would marry up nicely with the toe, and a 2x2 rib. The yarn is a Christmas sock set that I bought, I don't think it was this Christmas, I think it was the Christmas before, and it is from Biff Sugar Yarns. So I'm just watching, there's a raven just flying over the garden. I still have half of the main colour left. It's called the North Pole sock set, and it came with the red contrast, and I really like them. Again, I've done the Eye of Partridge section on the ball of the foot for my heavy feet, and these obviously they've been worn because so the colour's not looking as bright. It is there, but not looking as bright as it once was. But really pleased with them, really happy with them, and now I need to knit another pair. So next, oh God, goodness me, I'm going to need a cup of tea when I'm done this. So the next ones that were already on the needles, most of these were already on the needles. Like I said, I had several pairs on the needles to begin with. So these ones didn't come out as well as I'd hoped. These are commercial sock yarn. Now these are the Pseudo Heart and Soul, I believe. The colourway eludes me. The Toes and Heels are actually a contrast yarn. They're a bit, ignore the bits of fluff on. They are clean. But the Toes and Heels are one of my yarns, one of my hand dyed yarns. They're botanically dyed with madder, and the colourway is apricot, which isn't coming quite as peachy as it is, but it matches up really nicely with the peachy tones that was already in the sock yarn. So I still have half of this ball left, or thereabouts. The problem with this yarn is it seemed like I like commercial sock yarns for knitting socks because I'm so heavy on my feet. I keep saying heavy, but I'm kind of I always have been as a kid. I've always been heavy on my shoes as well. I get through them quite quickly, or I did as a kid. Commercial sock yarns suit me quite well, and they've got that robustness. My own hand dyed yarns, I like a BFL base over a merino, and I'm not really in any hurry to buy any more merino sock yarns for socks. They're okay for like other things, but not for socks. It's just, they just don't last for me. But a commercial sock yarn she does, but this one just didn't seem to have the same substance that the same sock base has in other colourways. So that was one of the first things I wasn't keen with. The second sock wasn't coming up gauge wise the same as the first, which is really strange. And I ended up making the sock a bit too big. So I started knitting and then I made the gusset and I wasn't concentrating and increased too far. Really it wants to be, well, what happened was it was at least half an inch too long. So what I had to do was I unpicked the toe, cut the toe off and pulled back an inch, and I can't remember if it's this one or the other one, but one of them I had to take the toe off, pull it back an inch, unravel all the toe and re-knit the toe top down and graft it because they were just too big. And consequently also with the gusset being so deep is the heel is really tall. So every time you knit a pair of socks, you learn something new and you can tweak it to, you know, your own pattern. All of my vanilla socks I knit with a really easy free pattern on Ravelry, which I will link to as well. But if I forget to, it's on my project pages. And 2x2 rib, Eye of Partridge heel, toe up again, but I've not slip stitched here. It's just a plain vanilla sock. Because it's a commercial sock yarn, I've not needed to do the slip stitch on the sole. So there was those ones. Then what else? Another pair of socks that was already on the needles were these. These are a DK weight. Now these were knit, I knit a one hole sock and it was too small. I had to frog the whole sock. So these have been knit 1.5 times. It's a DK weight and it's 100% merino for this patterned yarn, and it's from Felt Fusion. This colourway is called Flower Vine, and the bottom of the sock is my own sock yarn. It's a BFL nylon, and I used the undyed yarn for this and held it double. And the reason I did that is when I bought this yarn and the yarn for the next pair of socks I'm going to show you, I bought the DK weight and I just had a brain, I don't know, I wasn't thinking properly, and I bought it specifically for making DK weight squishy socks, and I thought I'll just contrast toes and heels, not a problem. And I didn't register the fact that they were 100% merino and there was no nylon in them, so that's not going to work for socks, which is why I used the BFL nylon for the bottom. So what I had to do was I knit the toe in the round, and then I joined the colour work, the colour yarn, and I knit the body of the sock, well, this part of the sock anyway, flat. I tried doing wrap and turns the first time I knit the sock and it looked terrible, so this time I just knit it flat all the way up to the heel. I knit the heel, and then when I really started knitting here, I started knitting in the round for the rest of the sock, and then I just went back and mattress stitched one side or the other. I don't know which side's the mattress stitched side. Anyway, I mattress stitched up the other side where it was open, and it's worked out really well. They're lovely and squishy, they're really cozy, the DK weight socks, so that would be why. So I knit those, Felt Fusion Flower Vine, and then it wasn't the only 50-gram skein of pure merino I bought for socks. I bought 3. One of them I haven't knit with, but the second one, again, you have to ignore like the fluff all felted to my heels because they have been worn. They're clean but worn. Is this colourway, and this one's called Salamander Soup, and it is really jazzy. To me, it reminds me of like toy carrots, you know, like carrots. So what I've done is I've done a blueberry waffle sock top and around the ankle. So these are my carrot and blueberry waffles. I've done exactly the same as I did with the other ones. I've used BFL nylon held double for the bottom. Knit the toe, knit it flat. I've done a eye partridge heel just on the heel this time, and the rest of the back I've just knit stockinette. Because they're DK weight and they're not really ones that I'll be wearing in shoes, they're for around the house, I don't need a fancy thickened stitch on the heel. I did with the flower vine ones. It wasn't until afterwards that I thought about it and decided not to bother with those. And again, knit in the round and a 2x2 rib, and yeah, I'm really pleased. I have another skein of DK weight 50-gram skein, another pair of socks, and they're called Magma and they're really bonny, and I'm going to be using a really dark navy mixed with black from the bottom, because the colour yarn's got like a dark black, bluey black in it. It's going to look really nice. But those are the next pair of socks. Okay, next, I've lost one. I can only find one. I don't know where the other one's gone. It's disappeared. Okay, these are an actual pair of hand-spun socks. I spun this yarn, oh, at least 2 years ago, specifically to make these socks. It was a blend that I blended up, and it's made with Kent Romney and Rainbow Firestar. So what I decided to do with this is I spun a whole bunch of yarn in, well, a small ball of yarn in this. I'm going to really struggle to show this. I'm going to try and get as close as I can and get in focus. Is it going to focus? It's right. Okay, 1 ply. When you spin yarn, if you do a 2-ply yarn, like think about your yarns, you've got like 1 strand, 2 strand, you all twist up together. So this, I did 1 strand, 1 ply in 100% Kent Romney, which is quite a hard wearing, longer length fibre. And the Rainbow Firestar I spun as 1 single ply as well, just pure Rainbow Firestar. It's 100% nylon. So I spun a really thin ply of nylon, and then I plied them together to make a sock yarn. And then realised I didn't have enough yardage to knit a pair of socks, so I then blended a load of the Rainbow Firestar with a load more of Kent Romney to make another yarn for the toes and the heels. So this is more like a heathered, it's the same fibres but it's heathered yarn. So what I've done here is I've used that for the toes, and I've used it for the heels, and I've actually used it for the cuff, because I ran out of this once I got up to about here, or I knew I was going to run out. So thankfully I had enough left of the heathered yarn to be able to knit the cuff as well. So what I've done here is knit a pattern called Dumbledore's Christmas Stockings, I think it is, and it's got this pattern in it. It's going to be really hard to show up on here. If I get it just right you can see it, but it's like a weave pattern. You can kind of see it there. It's made with knits and pearls, and I've done that just on the top of the sock, and I haven't even bothered on the back of the ankle, it's just on the front of the sock. On the bottom I've done the slip stitch again, because I don't know how well the Kent Romney is going to hold up, because it's kind of one ply of one and one of the other. I just wasn't sure, so I've done the slip stitch on the heel as well. One thing I've noticed, when I've done the slip stitches on the other socks as well, is it will pull this shorter. So what you need to do is, before you start your slip stitch section, is do a couple of rows of short rows. I do 2 lots of there and back, so like 4 back and forth rows of short rows there, knit this section along with the body, and once it gets to here I just do short rows after the slip stitch section as well, and that pretty much brings it to the same length as the rest of the sock. Otherwise it kind of warps, but that works really, really well, and once the sock's on you can't tell at all. So I've done a partridge heel turn, and the heel I've done like I did on the Silent Night socks, is I have done garter ridges. 2x2 rib, which is my preferred. Occasionally I do 1x1, but generally I do 2x2 rib, and yep, hand-spun socks. Okay, last pair of socks. Finally. Last finished object actually. Now Lily Nordic Stitches made a new sock design. She brought out a shawl quite a long time ago called the Hygge shawl. Excuse my pronunciation again. And she decided to bring out a different variation upon it, and a pair of socks based on it as well, which is the Hygge socks. And the pattern she knit for the design was knit in one of my hand dyed yarns, along with another dyer's yarn as well. So of course I had to knit the socks. I love the pattern anyway, but you know, even more reason to, and I had to knit them as soon as. So that's what I did, and I knit in 2 of my own yarns as well. So these are the Hygge socks, and I love this slip stitch design up the side of the sock. Now hers are shorty ones, they're so like short socks, but I don't wear short socks, so I just lengthened it, added extra length, and added a cuff on the top. So it's got these slip stitches, and I've knit this toe up instead of top down, obviously. So the slip stitches are actually usually that way, but it doesn't really matter because I see them from the top down anyway. And yep, it goes up one side of the sock. If I fold it out the other way, you'll be able to see that. As you can see, it runs up one side of the sock, which I really like. The yarns I've used are 2 of my own. They're on BFL nylon, so there's no slip stitches on the bottom. The toes and heels are knit in my colourway Artemis, which is this pale blue with speckles. There's just one random speckle there on the toe, but it's got speckles. I'll try and find this a bit where you can see the speckles more. Very lightly speckled. This is one of my second skin, so there's not as many speckles as there should be. But if I hold up there, you can see there's little golden speckles, and there's little green speckles and orange speckles as well. But this was not, this was a second skin. This is why it's in my stash, as if I need an excuse. And half of the skin hadn't dyed very well, which is why there's not as many speckles here, but you can kind of see throughout that he's got little speckles there too. And the lavendery colour is, as my colour was Slate, I believe, which is like it's purpley grey. And yep, I've done the toe like on the pattern, and the heel I've done half eye partridge, half garter heel again. And yeah, I'm really pleased with them. They're really comfy, I really like them. I'm biased, but you know. So yep, they're the Huggy socks, and they are, they've got quite a long cuff on them. These are my last finished object. So we got there. Oh, I've got fluff in my eye now. Hi, it's Future Mel. After recording podcast 13, I realised it was going to be a lot longer than I was expecting it to be. So I'm breaking this one down into two parts. The first part being this one, which will be all of the finished objects. And the second part will be all the works in progress. So just to let you know, that's why I'm cutting this one a little bit short. So see you in part 2.